Mrs. Kristalina Georgieva, thank you again for giving me this opportunity for an interview with الشرق Bloomberg again.
Great pleasure.
So you finished the meetings with the GCC ministers and the central bank governors, and you mentioned in your opening remarks something that was very remarkable. You gave many key policy recommendations. What is the most pressing and imperative action you see for the GCC countries at this particular stage?
Let me start by saying that the GCC countries have performed very strongly over the last years, and they remain a bright spot on the global economic horizon. Why? Because of the strong reforms they have been pursuing, and because of the fact that private sector has increased its role in the GCC economies. We discussed how GCC can further deepen integration. We concentrated on 3 key topics. 1, how to deepen trade integration, how the GCC countries can trade more with each other, but also present a united position when they trade with others, how they can expand trade integration for the benefit of the whole region. 2, we talked about financial integration. GCC countries have gone a long way to create strong conditions for attracting foreign direct investments and also for mobilizing domestic savings for the economy. But they can do more. They can do more to deepen the financial markets. They can do more to integrate the capital market of the whole of the GCC. And of course, this is not an easy task because countries have developed their own strength in financial markets. How to collaborate is the task ahead. So far, they have been competing with each other. How can they retain the strength of competition to make them perform better, but then enhance it with collaboration? And 3, we talked about technology, artificial intelligence, how the region can position itself more. The fact is, one of the strategic advantages of GCC economies is abundant energy. And we know that developing artificial intelligence requires data centers. Data centers require a lot of energy. In fact, we expect soon energy consumption from the needs of artificial intelligence to be equal to half of the whole energy consumption of the United States. So what else can they do? And then we talked about the advantages of a youthful population. Young people adapt to new technologies faster. And we talked about the continuous reforms in labor markets, in education and skills development, in reducing the burden of state intervention in the private sector. All in all, I came out of the meeting with confidence that what has worked for GCC, and it is fiscal discipline, counter-cyclical fiscal policies, is going to continue to work, and that the GCC countries have the ambition to do more together, to do better together.
You mentioned Oman in your opening remarks as an example of fiscal prudence. How can other GCC countries build on that?
Well, the most important step countries can take is to have medium-term fiscal plans, to put in place a framework that is not just concentrating on this year, but looking in the medium term. And then what is the tax policy? One thing that has been done very successfully here is to shift more towards value-added tax rather than having multiple tax regimes across different sectors. How to improve spending efficiency, how to think about spending, and that was a big topic of the discussion today. in a way that is appropriate for a rapidly changing world economy. How to make it more agile, more adaptable, so you put in place plans, but then you reassess, revisit, as Saudi Arabia recently has done, to make sure that the viability of your fiscal position remains strong. Necessary for the public finances, but also necessary because it increases the trust of capital markets in the country. Actually, we looked at the correlation between how much countries pay when they borrow and how fiscally disciplined they are. And it is very clear that markets reward fiscally disciplined countries. Oman got an upgrade in its credit rating to investment grade. To a great degree, strong and consistent fiscal position contributed to trust of markets.
So you mentioned Saudi Arabia. Previously, or just a few days ago, they projected that they will run a deeper budget deficit than previously expected, and we have recently followed that they are revisiting and reconsidering several of their mega projects. How will this change the IMF's outlook on Saudi Arabia's economy?
Our outlook on Saudi Arabia remains quite positive. Why? Saudi Arabia has demonstrated agility in terms of plans for public spending. As we know, oil price is now lower than it was projected some years ago. That means that oil sector revenues are smaller than anticipated. At the same time, to the credit of Saudi Arabia's leadership, the country has increased the share of non-hydrocarbon sectors in the economy. In fact, what we are seeing today is non-carbon sectors grow 4.4%, whereas the carbon part of the economy is actually shrinking a little bit. So when we talk about 1.8% growth in Saudi Arabia, it is driven by diversification of the economy. And that agility in public policy means that Saudi Arabia, despite this dual deficit they are now experiencing, they will have strong position, they have strong reserves, and they have agile policy making, which is so necessary for our world of rapid change.
So let's shift to Egypt. We are waiting for the 5th and the 6th revision. Could it happen the same way it happened with the 4th revision? Would they be able to reach staff level agreement on the sidelines of the annual meetings and then wait for the mission to conclude its visit after the annual meetings?
What I can tell you today is that our engagement is strong, and we do intend to use productively our annual meetings so we can reach as soon as possible staff level agreement. So it will be in the near future. And what I can say also is that in Egypt we have some parts of the program performing really well. Inflation down to 12%, growth projected 4.4%. The support for vulnerable populations really well targeted and strong, and the dynamics in the economy indicates that overall the country is moving forward. Where we are still having discussions how to make the private sector more prominent in the economy. And let me explain why this matters even more today than it mattered when we started the program. When we look at the resilience of the world economy in the last years, despite the numerous shocks, what we identify as one of the sources of resilience is the increase in private sector globally and in many of the national economies. Why is this important? Because private sector is more adaptable to change. And when you are in an era of prominence of change, so many transformative forces from geopolitics to technology to demography affecting countries, you actually need the private sector more to be a buffer for economic performance. So we will continue our discussions. I'm, as always, full of hope that we would come to a very good place, because the Egyptian people... I'm optimistic. The Egyptian people deserve nothing less. They deserve strong policies that boost opportunities for jobs and improvements in quality of life.
We heard that the government IPO's targets might be shifted into 2026 recently from the authorities. Will this impact the discussions?
As long as we have credible perspective, it will be taken into account in our discussions. In other words, we are not fixated on superficial targets. We are committed to the direction of travel, and the direction of travel is more entrepreneurships, more and better jobs, higher living standards.
So do you think they are on the right track in those government IPOs?
I leave this to the team to discuss. This is for detailed conversations, but in principle, there is a recognition that the future of the economy does require stronger private sector participation.
And we heard recently also that they might be getting a very big FDI, mainly from Qatar, in this new project that is called the Al-Room project. Will this expedite things?
I would tell you that when we talk to the friends of Egypt, they all very much rely on the fund's program to improve conditions for private sector investments. So we are aligned on what needs to be done, and in this sense, the sooner it gets done, the higher level of FDIs in Egypt.
Last question on Egypt. How does the IMF assess this great increase in the value of the Egyptian pound against the dollar?
I'm very happy for that. When we have the Egyptian pound higher, that means, all other things equal, that the purchasing power of people in Egypt goes up. We also have seen a very successful action to bring inflation down. Inflation is a tax on the poor people in Egypt. Now, we have to separate two things, though. One is the dollar depreciating, and the other one is the performance of the Egyptian pound. But it is good for Egypt that we are now in a situation in which the Egyptian pound can buy more.
Amazing. Let's go global and to Trump and to the US. So if this government shutdown lasts longer, how does the IMF see this will impact the US economy that is actually battling with a lot of debt?
What we are seeing is a recognition that there has to be a path to resolve differences. And I leave it to the people that are negotiating to get to a good outcome. Of course, this adds a bit more uncertainty at the time when uncertainty globally is high. So any effort to bring it down would work for the US, it would work for the world economy. What we have seen is that the actions that have been taken in the US do show some appreciation for keeping the world economy on a steady track. For example, after the initial announcements on tariffs, there have been agreements reached with countries. There has been some pausing on some of the tariffs. While the nominal rate of US tariffs on the rest of the world is 18%, the actual rate is 9%. 9% is still much more than it was before April 2nd. but much less than we feared. And as a result, we see the world economy adapting to this new environment somewhat better. You will hear from us our new projections for global growth, and they're in the context of what I just said.
So when we listened to the WEO in spring meetings, the first few lines mentioned tariffs and the fear of trade disruptions as the main concern for the IMF. What would the main concern be now? Would it be debt levels that many countries are facing at this point? Recently, we've been hearing from Europe this problem with debt. Bond yields are increasing across the board from the UK to France, even to Germany.
What you would hear from us is a very strong emphasis on the necessity to adapt to a world of higher uncertainty. And actually, we will be advocating strongly for all the steps that can be taken to reduce uncertainty. And that means stronger private sector, more agile at the time of uncertainty, and it means riding on a technological advancement that can lift up productivity and therefore make the economy stronger. And yes, you would hear a lot from us on the issue of debt. What we are seeing is by 2030, public debt is going to cross 100% of GDP. This is around the corner. Globally. What has happened since COVID is governments were forced to spend more to protect businesses and households during COVID, to spend more when Russia's war in Ukraine hit especially energy and food prices, to spend more when interest rates went up to service their own debt.
Correct.
Now they have to retreat. They have to go for fiscal consolidation. We are begging governments to be decisive and start bringing these debt levels down. However, easy to offer more spending, difficult to take it back.
Any fiscal pressures now might, have counter effects after all the easing that they are trying to do now to help those economies. Will that make some European economies tap the IMF's door? Do you think we would see France or Italy or anybody tapping the IMF's door?
And I don't see that coming. If you look at the French debt service, affordable, UK, affordable, recognition of the need to introduce more fiscal discipline, very high on the agenda there. I'm much more worried about low-income countries with high levels of debt because there, even a small exogenous shock can break the back of these economies. And the reason we are telling advanced economies, please bring down your debt levels, is also because demand for borrowing from these countries should come down. They should create more space for others to tap into markets.
One last comment on the weaker dollar. Do you think those low-income countries have a chance given to them now on a golden plate?
Certainly the weaker dollar helps with financial conditions, especially for those many that borrowed in dollars. It is easier now to service debt. And we are advocating countries to engage with us on debt management to see whether we can reprofile their liabilities, take advantage of conditions today. And of course, we hope to see inflation in the United States under wraps, under control, so the Fed can go further down with interest rates. This, of course, would be subject to two things: how the economy is doing how inflation is doing. Going back just to finish on the topic of tariffs, one good thing we have seen over this last 6 months that helps with the resilience of the world economy is that almost all countries decided not to retaliate when they got higher tariffs from the US. And majority of countries have opted to continue to trade under WTO rules. This is very welcome because it provides more predictability in the area of trade in a world that has become more uncertain.
Thank you so much, as always, for those great insights and for giving us the time amid this very tight schedule today. Thank you so much, Mrs. Kristalina Georgieva, for this amazing interview. If you allow me to thank everybody as well for watching us. شكرا لكم على حسن المتابعة. كانت هذه مقابلتنا مع مديرة صندوق النقد الدولي كريستالينا جيورغييفا.